Hello everyone, welcome to Footy Classified, and what a big day it has been in football. For the first time ever, a cyclone has meant that a match, in fact two, have been postponed to open the AFL season. Can you believe it? Tonight we're going to get into all the big issues. Drugs in football, the succession plan at Port Adelaide, we've got the changeover of coaches at the Sydney Swans, and we've got some big names here, and we'll be crossing to Andrew Dillon at the season opening launch with Tom Morris. Joining me tonight for the first time as my regular co-host of Footy Classified is the man who won 2 premierships with the Essendon Football Club, 5 bests and fairest, 5 All-Australians, 3 Anzac medals to my chagrin, and captain and coach of the Bombers, James Hird. Welcome
Eddie.
to Footy Classified, mate.
Great to be here. I can honestly say, after being the topic of much discussion on this show, that I never thought I would be on. But here we are, and looking forward to it.
Is it good to be here at Channel 9 without them actually being in your front yard?
Absolutely. It's great that the cameras didn't follow me in. I met a few cameramen out the front that I used to meet most mornings. But no, truly great to be here. Looking forward to a big 2025 with you and Rory and Tom. Yeah,
and I'll just quickly ask you, you're back at Port Melbourne.
Yes.
What's your position there? And you're introducing yourself back in the footy. Is it good to be back in the game?
Yeah, it's good. It's really good. Like my son Tom's playing down there, so helping out down there. Brendan McCartney, obviously the coach, loved coaching with Brendan, so that's been good fun. But yeah, Port Melbourne's been a lot of fun and a great group of guys.
We'll be speaking to Tom Morris in a few moments in Sydney. But from the Adelaide Crows, the man who is the All-Australian, a 2-time Malcolm Blight medalist and captain of the Adelaide Crows, Rory Sloane, who'll be a regular on the Sunday Footy Show. Good to have you here, Rory.
Eddie, you have no idea how long I've been waiting to hear those words, the first words that came out of your mouth. What a big week it's been in football. I'm a huge footy fan. I love the Footy Show growing up. Like Hirdy, this show's tormented my footy club for years, mate. I never thought I'd be on this set, but here I am, ready to give my views and fire back up.
Can I ask you what it's like at Clubland? Well, I know personally, but what's it like when your team is getting clobbered and you're the topic of conversation on Footy Classified?
Well, as a captain and a leader, I just try to tune out and really remove myself from Instagram, Twitter, any forms of media that I could consume and see the stuff that I didn't want to see because it just affected me. So I chose not to see it, and I'm not sure how you operated and you did, James.
I know what I did. I read every word, watched everything.
Fired you up more.
And wrote them all down. Boys, let's go up to Sydney now. Tom Morris is at the AFL launch tonight. G'day, Tommy. Well, what a day it has been. The launch of the AFL was going to be 0 round once upon a time. Now it's 0.5 round, isn't it? We've lost 2 of the games of the opening 4. What's the latest, mate?
Yeah, evening to you, Eddie, Rory and Hirdy. It's a great atmosphere up here, albeit a very serious atmosphere as well, given what is transpiring in Queensland over the next couple of days and also northern New South Wales. All the CEOs were here, all the presidents were here. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. They had a big meeting with the AFL this afternoon. The Commission is here as well. Even Gil McLachlan is in the house, Eddie, which I found interesting. And they're all just filtering out now. See you guys, have a good night, because the montage and the premiership video that we saw with Chris Fagan and the Brisbane Lions has just been shown inside. It's really a good night to mingle and have a chat to everyone. But as I said, the serious news at the moment is in regards to opening round and the fact that it's gone from 4 games to 2. So just recapping that, the Brisbane-Geelong game on Thursday night has been postponed. That's likely going to be round 3. And the Saturday night game, which was going to be Gold Coast and Essendon, has also been postponed. So just a quick timeline how this played out today. There was very little doubt that the Thursday night game would be postponed. The real question in the AFL's mind today was whether they also had to postpone Essendon versus Gold Coast, because there's every chance that People's First Stadium on the Gold Coast will be fine to play on Saturday night. It might be wet, but it does drain very quickly. But given the fact that the schools are shutting down over the next couple of days in Queensland, public transport shutting down, and also the fact that the AFL didn't want to send teams into Queensland, given the climatic conditions and the cyclone, it made perfect sense, I think, and that is the universal feeling from the clubs, that they postponed these 2 games. So then the next question is, when are the 2 games going to be played? I mentioned that round 3 looks likely for Brisbane versus Geelong, but Gold Coast versus Essendon is far more complex. That's because their buys don't line up. There's really 2 options. One, they could move a few different other clubs around and find a spot in the middle of the season. That, of course, would frustrate other clubs. The fixturing team would have to work in a pretty nuanced way to get that done. The more likely option at this early point, and this is what the clubs have been told this afternoon at the CEOs and presidents meeting, is that the game is played between round 17 and round 18. And why is that significant? Because round 17 is when the floating fixture starts, and that's when Gold Coast is due to play Essendon again. So there's actually every chance that Gold Coast play against Essendon in Melbourne, and then the two teams fly back up and play at People's First Stadium maybe 4 or 5 days later, because the floating fixture allows the AFL to dictate it. So that's the chance. The backstop, Eddie, is that the game is played after round 24 before finals. Either way, there's a lot for the AFL to work through over the next few days.
What happens if it's a dead rubber and we get to the bye round, and do you just say, don't worry about it, or do they keep playing in a dead rubber in that situation?
Well, Eddie, as you know, I'm glass half full. Imagine if one team's 8th and one team's 9th and they're playing for a spot in the finals. So that could be an unintentional wildcard game, and wouldn't that be amazing? All
right, Tom, we're going to come back to you through the course of the night. You've got interviews up there with Andrew Dillon. We look forward to that. And also Brian Cook from Carlton will join us on Footy Classified tonight. Guys, I think that they should persevere with this round. It's just been unlucky this year. Last year was sort of jammed in because the NRL played over in Vegas. This year the Vegas show was unbelievable for Peter V'landys and his team. But this is something that could happen going forward. So this is an alternative, maybe in 2 years' time, maybe next year. But State of Origin is back on the table. The players have said, yes, they're keen. And there is talk, serious talk, about making this a big game, a blockbuster game. And I want to get your thoughts on the pre-season in a moment, how this could fit in as a pre-season series. So Victoria, South Australia, Western Australia, and the Indigenous All-Stars has just been an unbelievable success. If you didn't want to have what we have at the moment, the way to sort of counteract the success of what the NRL is doing is to go all out and break all records in round one. So go Carlton-Richmond on the Thursday. It could be a game on the Wednesday. But Carlton-Richmond, say St Kilda-Collingwood, that gets 85-90. Essendon and Hawthorn, 90,000. Sydney and GWS. Brisbane and Gold Coast. And then the other teams are like that. I've swapped over the Adelaide and West Australian games so you can hold the showdowns and those for later on. But if you notice there, what it is all Melbourne clubs play each other in round one, because we're all gagging for the footy to go and see it, and that would be a huge thing. So what we can drop the graphic now. You get to a situation there where that is almost the biggest round of football in the world that weekend. It gives the AFL something to go back on against the NRL.
Well, you've never had 500,000 people attend a round across ever in the AFL. That has the potential to have 500,000 people or close to come to opening round, which is a huge way to kick off the year. There's always a lull in Melbourne that late February time. So get those state games away, then get that opening round away. I think it's a great way to start the season, kick it off with a bang.
And there's a make good for the northern states, because the whole idea of this was to give the focus to the northern states. So we're not trying to knock that on the head. But for at the moment, Collingwood and Brisbane, or Brisbane and Collingwood, play on the Thursday before Easter, so Holy Thursday. And what you could possibly do then is say get Essendon or another big club to play the Gold Coast. Stay up there over Easter break and bring the Essendon Army, the Collingwood Army up, and then flip the rounds. And that becomes a self-contained gather round. Do the same in Sydney with GWS and the Sydney Swans and 2 other teams, so that they still get that big focus. Now, is it the same as what we've got? I'll tell you the reason why this has worked so well. If we can put up the Telegraph from today in Sydney, this is what it looks like, the Sydney Telegraph today. And it hasn't come up, but what is a full page Sydney Swans front page, which you normally wouldn't get. Now, I'm tipping that the AFL paid for it or used Contra or whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, that's what you do. That's the commercial realities. But that has been able to get through the clutter. So Andrew Pridham and Dave Matthews, this is what they want to do. But ultimately, I think there's a way now to go back and say, well, forget about the stuff that NRL are doing. Let's just line ourselves up one way or the other. I'm not fussed, but there's a couple of options on the table.
Well, the Swans worked from having the opening round last year, and then really the Swans fans all year. It was packed stadiums, the SCG. So it really worked in Sydney last year. The follow on this year. How would Adelaide handle the Melbourne-centric side of that?
I think you could almost add a showdown in there just to get 50,000 people, and the same for a derby over in WA. But it's interesting, Ed, the last point you made is we can't be too focused on the NRL and what they do and chasing our tails there. And I'm probably opposite with a State of Origin. I just think as soon as you get a key player injured, and we've already seen the commentary around the pre-season being a little disjointed, that might add something into it too. I don't know when the players will train, but you mentioned about paying the players too, which would be a huge incentive. But for me, I think we do the year so well. We do finals incredibly well. The NRL can have their State of Origin, but for us, the whole season is basically a State of Origin, I think, with our crowds.
I disagree only because you look at what the NBA All-Star Game has done for NBA players, and a lot of AFL players look at NBA and say, we want to be part of that. And I think the state game now has just got a bit more cachet than what it had back. Certainly in my day. In my day, players didn't want to play it at all. It was sort of done. But it's come back on the agenda, and you hear every player. I know injuries come in, but you hear every player talk now, and there is an optimism or a positivity about it they haven't seen for a long time.
So the players cracking in, though?
Yeah, well, the discussion is that they're getting injured anyway. There's less chance probably of getting injured if you're playing top-class players who can hit you on the chest rather than some buffalo who comes in from...
Careful. Don't mention the VFL. I know what you're going to say.
No, I'm not going to go to the VFL.
Good, just be careful.
I don't know anyone coming from Port Melbourne coming in and
we'll knock a few out of
hitting the good people. But the point being is that this is something... The game has to develop. The world's coming at us. We've got the NFL coming to town in 18 months' time. You know, we can't just be a happy-go-lucky domestic competition. We actually have to step up into the real world. And don't forget, Foxtel's no longer owned by the Murdochs. You know, Dazen is they are looking at what's the big ticket item. 3 State of Origins, grand final. Now we're playing in the NRL in Vegas. What have you guys got? Well, the home and away season for us is a P. We've got to really ramp that up. But if there is an opportunity to do something in the pre-season rather than watch blokes run around playing in community series and all that sort of rubbish, let's get stuck into it.
No doubt there's a lull. There's a lull between, you know, in February, people want football. If we can give them football, I think we should be able to play it.
Guys, let's move on. The drug code. On this show last year, round 1, I said that's the biggest issue in football. The AFL told me behind the scenes that by mid-year they would be moving to toughen up the code. Here we are before round 1 and it hasn't happened yet. But let's have a listen to Patrick Dangerfield, who's the president of the Players Association, who's starting to move his position, and certainly Andrew Dillon is too.
For me, and I think for the players, it's quite clear the forefront of that needs to be the health and safety of the players. But at the same time, you can't turn a blind eye to those manipulating it. And whether they are or they aren't, you have to be prepared for all scenarios. And that's being a realist, to be frank. But first and foremost, the most important part is that it's a health and safety mechanism and it's supporting players that do have challenging issues.
We've been discussing with the Players Association for a while now, but those talks have ramped up in the last couple of weeks, and we've got a series of meetings with the Players Association over the next 2 weeks with a hope to resolve as soon as we can.
A lot of footy fans ask, why can't the AFL just do whatever it wants? Why do you need the players' approval? Why is that?
Well, the policy's been in place for over 20 seasons now, and it's worked really well as a partnership between the AFL and the Players Association. And I think with the health and welfare model behind it, I think it makes sense to have the players bought in and brought along for that.
Guys, I just think it now has to come out of the players' hands. The health and welfare have no problem with that, and it should continue. But it is now a different world than 20 years ago. By that far, it's not funny. Let me just run you through this. If WADA gets you for a drug, you get 4 years. Your career's over. If you self-report, you get nothing. And if the media, or you get caught online, or somebody puts a phone over the toilet at a nightclub, you get rubbed out for 2 weeks. So it's already all over the place. And you're making players a target for either the media or for people with nefarious actions. Organised crime in this country has gone off the charts. Betting and integrity is a huge thing. We're putting players in harm's way at the moment. We've had deaths in recent times. We've had lives that have been ruined. We've got sponsors and reputational issues at football clubs. People's reputations who've got nothing to do with drugs are getting done because they're allegedly running a club with a dodgy culture, which is a catch cry, but is absolutely devastating for those involved. Future litigation. In the next 10 years, we've had the concussion. It will be a person who will come out and say, you taught me how to get around the drug code. You knew that I self-reported and you didn't stop me, and I'm suing you now for ruining my life. Drugs are everywhere in our community, so we have to do something about it. And I think they have to get a little bit stronger on it. And I think that in saving players, you have to be a bit stronger than what we have in the past. That's the discussion.
I think at clubland, at the CEO level and executive level, I don't think you get a disagreement. And I think I agree with a lot of what you're saying, Ed. But I find it very hard to listen to Andrew Dillon, CEO of the AFL, Patrick Dangerfield, President of the AFL Players Association. They're going to be very hard to convince the players to change it from what it is now. I don't know how you do it. I mean, you can strong arm them, you can present all the stats. But having been on the Players Association when this was brought in 25 years ago, there was the players, they wouldn't bend. Things have changed. I'm just not sure how you're going to get the players across the line.
Rory, you've been on the Players Association and you're not long out of clubland. What's going on? Do you actually talk about drugs now? I mean, once upon a time it was about alcohol and behaviour. Do you actually call the elephant in the room and say, right, come on, we know people are taking drugs. This is what we need to do?
We have in the past, and this is where it's always baffled me that everyone has their own alcohol policy, and it's always a topic in media, like what's your alcohol policy, or these guys are drinking on a 6-day break. But the drug issue is sort of always been pushed aside, and I'm not sure why, because in my time, and I've played a fair bit of footy over the past 16 years, and you both have been involved in footy for a lot longer than I have never seen, and for the kids watching at home, I've never seen someone play consistent footy, or it's very rarely someone do, I should say. There may be a couple of outliers, but I've never seen someone really play consistent footy for a long period of time, sustain time, and then have a long, healthy life afterwards. So it's scary. And that's where we've just got to be strong on it. And I'm still unsure why the AFL, and when I was on the AFLPA board, I was always trying to look after the players and probably had to speak on behalf of the players. But I've always wondered why the AFL now, it's been 20 years and probably not too much change, why don't they just come down hard and make a change?
Well, I think we need to change the vernacular. It's not so much coming down hard. I'm saying we need to do this to save players. We've seen players, their careers gone. We're seeing players who are dying from the adverse effects, long-term effects of drugs. We're seeing lives being lost in it, and all the things that I outlined, and there's another 10 that you could add onto the list there. So I think it's interesting that we're going to get to that situation. The Players Association are still pushing back, but the clubs and people in general, and as I said, litigation is catching up. That's why, we've seen the concussion. It even comes into the concussion. What is the adverse effects of taking drugs in a concussion sport?
Well, we have the greatest opportunity as a sport in Australia's biggest organisation to set an example for the rest of society, which you mentioned before. It's a massive issue as well.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, Coach's Corner. That man, James Hird, is going to take us into the mind of that man, Big Dean Cox. Let's find out how the Sydney Swans can recover from the belting in the grand final last year and bounce out this weekend. Welcome back to Footy Classified. We'll get the apostrophe on the end of coaches next week. Hirdy,
grammar.
Get the grammar right,
exactly.
get the punctuation. Hirdy, the Sydney Swans are the early focus of everybody. And take us through the agony and the ecstasy. This could have been the greatest day for John Longmire, and that is a picture in stark relief there of a person who had given his all and he's done. He had no more to give. That's after the grand final this year.
Well, I think the whole AFL world had a huge amount of respect for John Longmire and what he'd done. Yeah. The teams he'd built, the grand finals he'd been to, the premierships he'd won, and the coach he became. And the Swans last year thrilled us for most of the year. Thrilled us with their midfield, the way they got back in defence, the way they attacked to the midfield, and some really special games for the Swans. But when it came down to it, in the grand final, they collapsed.
All right, now you're going to take us through the defence. Let's hear from Dean Cox and what he's changing up for the Sydney Swans.
The way we defend. I think probably towards the back end of last year and certainly the last day was not the level we want. So just the way we defend as an 18-man defence and how we go about that.
OK, 18-man defence. What have you seen that's different about the Sydney Swans' defence from last year?
There's no doubt their defence has changed in the way they defend, but the one thing I want to focus on first is their loose ball gets around the contest, getting more numbers of the contest, which Brisbane were better than them in the grand final. And as the year went on, they didn't do as well. 2023, they ranked number 3 in loose ball gets, which is all about how you get over to the contest. 2024, they were almost last at 17, which is a big differential, and showed in the grand final they weren't allowed to win the ball, weren't able to win the ball enough around the contest.
So we talk about zone defence, we talk about flooding, pushing up, etc., etc. Take us through where it fell down for Sydney in the grand final.
Well, this is a stat that really hurt them. 42 uncontested marks in the first quarter, 145. That's unheard of. In a game of football, you try and keep a team to around 80 marks or less, and you think you're doing very well. They'd had 80 by half-time. And so what that said to me is Sydney weren't defending together as a team, and there's a lot of zone defence. This is a classic from the grand final. If you watch Brisbane here, they're obviously trying to keep the ball off Sydney. This first kick, this is when the Sydney Swans should try and pin them into this corner. Watch how many uncontested marks lead to the first Brisbane goal. So 1, Brisbane players just floating around, should have been closed down. 2, now is when you pin them into this corner. Right now you've got the opportunity to pin them here. Brisbane now start to slowly bring the ball through. It's enough opportunity. Sydney are defending as a zone rather than man-on-man close to the ball and then as a zone. Now watch here Ryan Lester as he moves through the contest past Sydney players, and this is the kick. No one picks him up, and then we can stop the vision as Ryan Lester's about to get the ball. if we just stop this here, the Sydney midfielders are playing a zone defence. The Sydney defenders are playing a man-on-man defence. Leaves a huge hole. Ryan Lester gets the ball over, and Brisbane get their first goal, and on the way they go. Now,
and he could have kicked it to 3 players on that occasion.
Exactly. To my mind, what Dean Cox has been working on is that loose ball gets, but also a more tighter defence around the ball, a more man-on-man defence at the ball, and then zoning out and giving the chance. And this is what we see against the Suns in the last practice match, which the Swans, more condensed around the ball, close to the ball, send the Suns wide and watch Sydney try and compress them into the pocket. And then, as you'll see, get over to the ball, get the ball out of bounds. And that's a win. For Sydney, that's a win, keeping your forward half. That, to me, is the biggest difference between what happened in the grand final. We love watching Sydney play. That's the sort of play that can take them from being a grand finalist, severely beaten, to a premiership team this year.
And you could see Rowbottom took on 2 players there, held back, then ran up to block, and as the ball comes over,
it's all about your eyes, looking at the eyes, looking where they're going to kick it and try and defend properly. But I love what I saw from Sydney in that practice game.
So a lot of people are death riding the Sydney Swans after 2 bad grand final losses. What do you see in them this year? Do you think they can go the next step?
Absolutely.
Can they win a flag?
I think, as I said, huge respect for John Longmire, did a great job, but I think Dean Cox is the man to take them all the way. And what I'm hearing out of Sydney is they're really buying into that team defence, and the players understand that that's the next step.
OK. Dean Cox, All-Australian superstar. He's been in the assistant coach's box. Can you tell me back to your first game? What was going through your mind, literally, going into that first game?
As a coach?
As a coach.
The week before, I was waking up in the middle of the night thinking, I'm not going to win a game here. I was petrified that I wouldn't win a game as a coach. I'm sure he's not as negative, the negative feelings not going in his head like I had. But it's a nervous time, that first game. He's just not sure what you're going to get. But he's got a great team underneath him, and he'll do really well.
Good on you, mate. All right, we're going to go back up to Sydney now. Tom Morris, who is again with Andrew Dillon, and he's asked him some questions about Tasmania. Now, I can tell you, there's a motto at Tasmania at the moment that progress is no progress. That's what the people of Tasmania are saying. They're saying, we don't want the new big super ground, and it's really starting to blow up. Jackie Lambie down there, the senator, she's saying, no way we're going to have these things. So there's a lot of drama going on. Let's hear from Andrew Dillon with Tom Morris.
Is Tasmania still on track, or is there a slight delay that's causing some friction down there?
Look, it's a really complex planning process that we're going through with the stadium at Macquarie Point, but we are hopeful that the planning process will resolve by the middle of September, and then that's where it's legislated to do. It'll go to before Parliament in early October. So we're a couple of months behind, but I think we can make that time up through the construction. So really excited about the Tassie Devils, and everything's on track.
Are you certain there'll be a Tassie Devils team in the AFL in 2028 as planned?
Look, at this stage, there's nothing that says otherwise, but there is, plenty of work to do, and it is a complex planning process that we're working on. So we've got to dot every I and cross every T.
I'm aware that opening round this year isn't what it was last year because of the situation unfolding in Queensland, but is opening round here to stay in the way it's been formed the last couple of years?
Look, what we do every year is we review, the events that we put on, and last year's opening round, all the indications with ticket sales, club memberships in New South Wales and Queensland are all ticking along well ahead of where they were last year, which were ahead of where they were in 23. So I think there is momentum behind opening round, and I would, I'm really comfortable with how it's gone. Obviously, things have been taken out of our control in Queensland this week, but we'll be back bigger and better next year.
The season keeps moving forward, though, doesn't it? I mean, Las Vegas and the NRL was last week. If that's something to compete with, why don't you compete with it properly and move the season forward again?
Look, also, we share a lot of our venues with cricket, and we've got to make sure that we're respectful of other sports and where they sit as well. So I think this is about the right time, and we've also got to work in with our players and the clubs in relation to the pre-season and making sure that we're getting the balance right.
How do you fit the NFL in next season with the current fixture?
Well, that's something that we'll work with Visit Victoria, the MCC and the NFL on, but we're, again, the MCG, we can turn that around between multi-sports during a week, and I've got no concerns about that.
And the last one that I've got for you is one that's on the lips of many coaches. You'd be aware of frustrations among coaches and footy departments. What are you doing to alleviate those frustrations, not just around pay, but around conditions and work hours and those sorts of things?
Look, we continue to work with the Coaches Association led by Alistair Nicholson. Last year we made a number of changes to the soft cap, including taking 20% of the AFL senior coach out of the cap to provide more runway for the clubs and the coaches to have headroom for them in that cap. So we'll continue to work with the coaches, but it's certainly something that we're aware of.
Thanks for joining us on Footy Classified, Andrew.
Appreciate it, Tom. Cheers.
Thanks very much. Andrew Dillon being quite candid there. I think they have to absolutely lift the soft cap for the assistant coaches.
Yep.
It's ridiculous that we're starving the people who need to be there. And we're going to go talk in a moment about Jamarra Ugle-Hagan. And this is a prime example of why you need more people around football clubs. Yep. Let's hear what Sam McClure broke last night on Monday Footy Classified.
There are 3 key relationships that Jamarra Ugle-Hagan has to fix in order to be considered for selection again. One is with the coach, Luke Beveridge, another the captain, Marcus Bontempelli, and another a senior teammate and a man who he lived with for several months at the end of last season, that being Rory Lobb.
Yep, that's an exclusive story last night. It's 100% correct. OK, there's nothing that drives a supporter mad more than a number 1 draft pick or a good player who turns up and has got no interest of being involved at the start of the season. And when the figures, even the cost of living, we'll take that into account because it even hurts even more. But blokes are now getting paid, average is about $600,000 this year and heading towards $2 million a year. Come on, be serious.
Yeah, well, Jamarra, I'm not sure what Jamarra's issues are, but if you...
I'll tell you, Jamarra's acted the GOAT. Last year in the final series, he was out and about before the Western Bulldogs played Hawthorn, got 4 touches in that game. Coach was absolutely filthy. Captain was absolutely filthy. And he's had a big summer off the field. Some say maybe they need to put a red rope at the front of the Whitten Oval to get him to turn up. But I'm being hard on him because I really like Jamarra Ugle-Hagan and I'm watching a kid just ruin his opportunity for something that's never going to come around again.
Well, Rory, I ask you, if you've lost the trust of the coach and the captain, it sounds like there's no coming back. It's very hard. You might lose the trust of the coach, but the captain is on your side. But if you've lost trust of both, very difficult. You
don't do that over one instance either. Yeah. That must be over a period of time. And I can only imagine Western Bulldogs the same. Whenever someone messes up or hasn't quite lived up to the standards that you've got, you wrap your arms around them and you help them through it. So where the loss of trust comes with when that gets broken over and over again. And I mean, a coach and a captain have 43 other players to look after as well. So it comes to a point where you go, well, how much time and effort can I sink into one person when all these other guys need my help? And we've got round 1 coming up, which is going to be huge. And I mean, I don't see the rush to bring Jamarra back anyway. I mean, you can put him in the VFL for a while and...
We'll have to. He's not ready to go. No. But can I ask you, I mean... Kevin Sheedy used to go looking for blokes like this. I mean, Kevin Sheedy be around his house now, come to the Bombers, I'll look after, I'll get you there. And it worked for a long time and then ultimately doesn't. But what's your position on this?
The greatest one was Ben Cousins with Sheeds. I mean, Sheeds was a big catalyst around Ben getting to Richmond. Rang the old Richmond players, rang the old Richmond mafia, so to speak, to get Ben back there. Sheeds definitely would reach out, but there are things that trust is the one. That keeps ringing in my ear. If you've broken the trust over and over again, I don't see them coming back.
But it's an interesting one because you can't do drug testing and things. But Collingwood was into Ben Cousins at that stage, and we said no because we had a meeting and said, we're not Odyssey House. Yeah. We can't have everything into Ben Cousins in this situation, as much as we'd love to have him played and the Ben that we all know and love, but he was just bringing too much trouble to the club.
Well, you already had the Rat Pack then too, didn't you, as well?
Yeah, well, they Rat Pack, but they were good fun. Yeah. They got into a bit of trouble. Nothing was like that.
It comes back to one person. It comes back to Jamarra. Does he want to change his lifestyle to get back, to rebuild the trust, train hard, stay out of trouble, whether he's in trouble, but stay out of going out, actually just use his performance on the field to get back to trust. If he doesn't want to do that, there's no chance of him coming back.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, one of the most fascinating people in football is Simon Goodwin and the Melbourne Football Club. Their last few years have been an unmitigated disaster. This bloke coached alongside him and this bloke played with him.
Played with him, yep.
Teammates together, coaching teammates. Let's discuss Simon Goodwin and Melbourne right after this. Welcome back to Footy Classified. The Melbourne Football Club has had all sorts of turmoil in recent times. They've had presidents suing each other, 2 presidents gone, a stand-in president at the moment with a new one coming in, Stephen Smith. Brad Green is out there making a lot of strong comments and trying to galvanise the troops. You've had star players in all sorts of issues, the best and fairest, their best player not being able to really get to the line much last year. All these things going on. You know, dramas with Petrarca as well, with his injuries. It's just been a total mess. Simon Goodwin, paint a picture. Hurdy, what's he like? He was your assistant for 3 years.
Yeah, so Goody and I coached together for 3 years at Essendon, and I found him a fantastic coach. Really intelligent, understood the game, could see the game, concentrated on the contest in midfield, was really a midfield, but knew how to defend the ground, how to set up the ground. And it's interesting that the contest and the midfield side of Melbourne's game is excellent. The defence is excellent. Went and got Lever and May specifically for those positions. But you'd have to say historically that connection, which is where all the focus has gone at the moment. You go through the media, the connection between the mids and the forwards is something that that it needs to get better. And I think that is a lot about, and this is my opinion on Simon, he doesn't like being scored against. He doesn't like kicking to the zone where it'll bounce straight back out, and probably keeps it a bit skinny down one side of the ground, which means that they don't get scored against, but they don't score as much. Now, I'm not sure what the focus is right now, but they haven't recruited any big forwards, have they?
No, well, that's what I was going to ask. Do you think that's more a recruiting issue, or is that more a game style?
I think Goody likes to play that way. I think that's the way I sort of was coaching with him. It's a long time ago, but this is their recent Demons recruiting.
So Van Rooyen's one that they need to come.
Absolutely.
He's got a bad back at the moment, but ones that have gone out, McAdam and Shaki. Is it the recruiting? I mean, you can only. This is the great conundrum, isn't it? Is you've actually got to play a style for the players you've got, not what you'd hope they have.
And he's had some of the best midfielders in the competition and focused around that. So I think it's about the players he's got, but it's also I believe it's his philosophy. He might come out and say it's differently. I mean, you played with him. He was a great player, but super intense as well.
Yeah, I think he's a very different coach to what he was player, because he was super intense. Speaking about trades and bringing people in, I mean, I would have gone hard at Tex last year if I was Melbourne. Tex coming out of
Tex
contract.
Walker coming out of Adelaide.
He wouldn't have done it, but that would have been... Someone like that would have slotted in really well to the way Melbourne want to play.
It just seems like there's a new dawn, though, at Melbourne at the moment.
Yep.
So can he now push all that aside? And I think the footy world wants to say, right, OK, we've had all that, now let's move forward. Yeah. Can he do that? Is he going to be allowed to... I mean, obviously, if you start winning, no one cares. But is he going to be able to, in his own mind, get himself right and take this team forward?
Think about last year. Very little Petrarca. Oliver wasn't his best. Those two players go back to their best. They're suddenly a top 8 team, top 6 team, definitely, and then they get a chance to do something.
Well, we saw it already. I think that was last weekend was a clear insight to what Melbourne have been doing. I actually spoke to Melbourne a lot about a coaching role, and unfortunately, timing didn't quite work out for myself and my family. But what they're going to do this year is us in the media will create a bit of noise around them. They won't listen to a thing. Their fans will ride the roller coaster. They are so honed in and focused on because they've had a lot of success.
So this is the inside. You spoke about coaching at Melbourne.
This was my take, yes.
Yeah,
this is my take on that.
So you're saying, right, OK, everything's been thrown at them. Don't worry about that. Just focus in on what we're doing.
Well, and because they've had success in the past, their leadership group is so driven to get back to where they were. I mean, they were the best group doing things so far and above. Yep. Better than everyone else in the competition. So they are driven to get back there, and I think it's reflecting...
Which is where Gary Pert said they had a great culture and then everyone took the mick. Yeah. But at that stage, he was probably thereabouts.
And the guy that took the job that you were probably offered, Nathan Jones, I mean, he will bring a selfless attitude into that midfield as well. The type of guy he is, you won't have any players playing for themselves. It'll be about it's team, which is a really important part in the midfield as well.
And Jonesy loves that club too, so he'll do absolutely anything for him. So they'll be fine.
So, guys, what's it like when you're sitting there watching Footy Classified before the first game, Hurdy, and either the president or the CEO comes out and has a big outlandish statement at the start of the year? Does that fill you full of joy and confidence and drive, or what?
Well, it sets expectation. I'm not sure who you're referring to, but I wouldn't want the CEO or someone else coming out and saying you're going to finish top 4. That would put a little bit too much pressure on. But
well, watch this, because Brian Cook says Carlton are finishing top 4.
Cookie, big year for Carlton. What are your expectations?
Oh, golly. Well, you know, we want to make the top 4 and then see how we go in the finals, basically. So we're not shying away from that. It's going to be a tough old year. It's very, very even. I haven't seen it so even for a long time, you know. So any one of, probably 16 clubs can make the 8 at the moment, I think. Yep.
Are you concerned about the injuries that you've got in the pre-season?
Yeah, you're always concerned a little bit about them because you'd love to have them all on the park, you know. But the reality in AFL footy is when you're training on a threshold for about 3 months, you do get injuries, and every club that I'm aware of has got their handful, and so have we. So I wouldn't be overreacting to that yet. Okay, I think we'll be pretty good. We'll we'll put a pretty good side out there in the first round.
Now, it's your last year as CEO of Carlton. What does your role look like this year compared to what Graham Wright's is at the club? How does that actually work?
Yeah, no, we work together as CEOs. I'm the CEO, he's the deputy CEO. There'll be a changeover of the amount of duties and things he does, and mine will come down a bit over the year, and by October he'll take over completely, and I will retire.
So if you win the premiership, you are the premiership CEO, though.
Yeah, we've had a few laughs about that, Righty, and I have said, look, if we're winning, I'm definitely staying, you know.
Thanks for the chat, Cookie.
No worries, thanks, Tom. See you, mate.
I reckon Tommy caught Brian on the hop there. I reckon he was just heading in, ready for a really good night, and he's dropped the top four. And Vossi be sitting at home going, "Oh, Cookie, no, don't drop the top four on me. I don't want that pressure yet." But, I mean, in all seriousness, like, that would be a goal of theirs. Absolutely.
And why not?
Embrace
Why
it.
not?
Brian Cook's been around footy for so long. Why not?
Yeah.
I tell you what, it's going to be harder though, because he's only a first-year player, but Jagger Smith was looking fantastic. And didn't they love him? Every time he went near the ball in this practice match, he got a standing ovation. And then an innocuous knock on the knee, and it's a knee reconstruction, an ACL, anterior cruciate ligament. As you see, gets up here, actually did some runs up and down, but then the next day when he went in, unfortunately he is out for 12 months. Now, you're a glass half full man, Rory Sloane. What's the upside of this?
Plenty of upside. I mean, we have seen the outpour of sympathy, and we know football clubs are so caring, and we've seen that for Jagger. But the upside, Jagger's got two choices in the end. He can feel sad and sorry for himself, which I'm sure he's not. From what I've heard, he's an unbelievable kid, incredibly driven. His other choice is to go, well, yep, I've done my ACL. I'm out for a whole year, maybe just under. I have a greatest opportunity as a first-year player to build a body, to build a man's body, spend a year in the gym, get strong, get so far ahead of every other first year in the competition, it's not funny.
Not get smashed as well, playing as an undersized player.
Spend some time with the coaches, do your rehab well. When I think about guys that have done this really well in the past, I think of Will Ashcroft, ACL's second year. He clearly went into that with a clear plan. His ground balls were so clean last year. He's one of the cleanest by hand in the AFL, I think. Last year, we saw what his grand final was like. The other one, I've had done a lot of work with Riley Thilthorpe over the last couple of years too, and seen his transformation from turning a boy's body into a man's. He looks like a 28-year-old man ready to destroy this competition, and he's only 22 years old. So he had that same attitude. He went, yep, feel sad and sorry for myself for a week or two, and no, now I'm going to launch.
And then you had some horror injuries. I mean, you had the navicular that looked like it was going to end your career. You had your head caved in. You had a knee as well, didn't you? We had a knee before you even started.
Yep.
How did you get through those situations?
It's interesting to listen to Rory. It's exactly the attitude you need to have. I mean, my attitude whenever I get injured for long term was I want to come back a better player, a more rounded player, stronger, fitter, and more mentally prepared than ever before. And there's something to be said for almost every player coming in the first year to do that. Rather than play them games week in, week out, get them strong, get them fit, and get them ready to play 10 seasons of AFL football.
Well, and it helps if you've got a senior head to come in to rehab with you. I mean, he's got Charlie Curnow there for a couple of weeks at least, just to maybe learn off and bounce a few things off as well. And he can certainly show him the ropes.
Go on, you boys, and good luck, because Jagger looked sensational early on. He's had a fantastic pre-season, and good luck, son. We all wish you the best in your recovery, and we know that you're going to have a great long career ahead of you. We're going to take a break. When we come back up to Tommy Morris. He broke a story last night on 9 News about a cultural series of games next year where 9 of the 18 clubs have said, yes, we're in. The other 9 said, no, we're out. I still don't understand what it is. He's going to tell us right after this. Welcome back. We're going to get to news or noise in a moment. Let's go up to Tommy Morris, who is up in the Sydney... Oh, so I can say the Sydney Swans, up in Sydney with the AFL for their big launch tonight. Tommy, you broke a story on 9 News last night. It captured my eye. It was about the cultural series. 9 teams have said yes to it. 9 have said no, which seems a bit incongruous to me. What actually is it?
Yeah, Eddie, so the Cultural Heritage Series is... an initiative from the AFL, obviously with 9 clubs that have got themselves involved, whereby at 9 games across the season for 9 different clubs, those clubs will have an added focus on multiculturalism and bringing new fans to the game which may not have seen a game of football before. For example, North Melbourne's plan in round 2 against Melbourne is to take a bus out to Werribee, pick up a group of non-football fans, so young kids or people that like soccer or different sports, bring them to the game and have them watch the game of footy. So each club is treating it differently, but it's essentially around match day activations.
Oh, that's great. I've been long a proponent of that. You've got to sometimes go and get them. Yep. And I know from my experience, I mean, my father was Scottish, my mother was Irish, which means I like a drink as long as it was free, James. But my dad was a soccer guy. The first game he went to see was down at Windy Hill. He thought 4 teams ran out. And it was the culture of there and then being able to go to the footy that brought the love of the game.
The fact is to grow the game, we have to get the multicultural areas.
All right, now it's time for News or Noise.
All right, I'm going to you first, Hurdy. News or Noise is the name. So you got me there?
I got you, Tom.
Yeah, good. Let's go. Hurdy, news or noise? Justin Longmuir's new contract made him more sackable.
Makes no difference. If he performs, they'll stay on. If he underperforms, then look out.
Sloaney, welcome to News or Noise. Hawks' head wobble in pre-season will come back to bite them. News or Noise?
Nah, no chance. Very much noise. Sammy Mitchell's far too smart a coach to let the head wobble affect them at all.
Eddie, news or noise? The AFL should listen to you more often.
Of course, that is news. That is absolute gospel. And the reason being, I got a message from Laura Kane to say they're bringing the Eddie rule. You know, I've been banging on about how shiny the balls are and no one can... Well, I sent this to them. This was the NFL when I was over in America, about how they actually changed the colour of the ball. Ball comes out factory, they knock all the shine off it, they scrub it, they get it going, and now they're going to give the balls back to the clubs to kick in during the week. And you might even find second-hand balls at a game so that the point is not too much, that it's not so slippery, and you can actually catch the ball and kick it.
We normally do actually kick a few balls in midweek. It's not like we don't have any. There's normally a few there match day, but it's those random ones you might get at the bottom of the basket that comes out and you're like, oh, this is very...
Well, when you've got 15 at different ends, sometimes you get a new ball that comes out at the 10-minute mark of the last quarter and everyone's going, what's going on here?
Can't kick them.
Can't kick them. All right, so you're up for it?
Absolutely. When we were playing, I think the clubs provide the balls and we used to get them before the game and kick them around the change room. So all for it. Should happen.
Good on you, boys. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Andrew Moore, the king of the Lexus at Lexus of Blackburn, is providing another magnificent Lexus car for the Player of the Year. And James Hird will be the man in the chair to decide who drives away that magnificent Lexus on Footy Classified.
Goes on the left boot, a fly early from Lohman. There's a little highlight to kick things off. We had a stack of footy last week. Lohman, the second highlight of the first quarter.
There he is. To Houston. First time, won't be the last.
Libba, he couldn't, could he? Sam Davidson is having an afternoon. McCabe fed it out. D'Ambrosio turned out of trouble. They kicked the ripper. Baker's going to go for it as long as he can. He's made good connection. That's a way to warm yourself to your new club and your new fans. Baker from long range.
Welcome back to Footy Classified. For all the talk and all the drama we've had in the last couple of days, I really fervently believe this is going to be the greatest football season we've had. It's just going to be absolutely magnificent. And it'll even be better because Isaac Hannay last year won the magnificent LBX Lexus from Lexus of Blackburn. Andrew Moore and the team, they're building out there at the moment. You actually can see it from Mars. Elon Musk has sent up the satellite and you can actually see it from up there at the moment. It's so big and the coffee out there is absolutely magnificent. Isaac Hannay loved it.
Kind of like Eddie's house, I can see from Mars too. So.
Oh, it's a big one.
Let's get stuck into it. All right, we're going to pick the Player of the Year, and what it is going to be is the player who plays the best game as judged by us over the course of the year. Isaac Hannay played an absolute ripper. He got the Lexus. Got another Lexus up for grab. Thanks to Andrew Moore and the team at Lexus of Blackburn. Let's go. Nominations.
For me, well, this man got robbed twice last year from cars. Nick Dacos. I mean, he cut Richmond apart. It wasn't much of an opposition, but the way he ran through the lines, he's set for another huge year. And I just love watching Nick Dacos, the way he plays, the way he moves, his sideways movement, and then his ability to hit a target or kick a goal under pressure. is, I think, once almost a generational talent.
Yeah, and so for me, I've got Clayton Oliver. With so much speculation and scrutiny around his off-season, where he'd end up, the best way to quiet the noise, Eddie, is to perform. And he certainly did that. 11 clearances, a few goals, and destroyed that game.
And I'm going for this man, Isaac Kako. He is an absolute machine out there at the moment, Hurdy. I tell you what, if ever the Bombers were going to get excited again, this is the bloke to bring them back in. They love a small forward like this boy, and he is an absolute star. Now, when I listened to the game the other night, I was getting excited, but so too were the commentators, because have a listen to this. He's a bloke with a name that has 4 letters, K-A-K-O, and we've got 3 different pronunciations of that name.
Former Port player. Kako, is it a big moment for him? I think it is.
Oh, look at
Kick
this.
towards half forward. Kako. Draper splits the pack. Kako's got 4!
Heard in the under-18s, there was another one, so it was 4 from 4. Anyway, we decided to ask Isaac. We went to the man himself. What is your name, Isaac?
It's Isaac from the Essendon Football Club. I've heard a few different variations of my last name the past few weeks, but settle it once and for all, it's pronounced Kako.
Isaac Kako. It's a name that we will remember, just as we did, well, back in the Footy Show days when I asked a bloke called Scott Camporelli. I'm not sure. Now, he's got twins. If they come out and say one of them is Camporelli and the other one is Camporelli, then we're going to be in big trouble.
They're going to do it to mess with you.
Do you guys remember the Lenihan twins who played for Geelong? One was called Lenihan, the other one was called Lenigan.
Are they just pulling your leg?
They were twins. No, anyway. But let's go back in time and listen from the horse's mouth about Scotty's name. Scott, can I ask you right from the word go, mate? Is it Camporelli or Camporelli? I've heard you say all sorts of things.
No, proper pronunciation is Camporelli. Matty, it's Scott Camporelli here, mate. Just firstly, how's your dad going?
Hang on a second. What did you just introduce yourself as?
Scott who? Yeah, I did it, didn't I?
You called yourself Scott Camporelli. What is your name, Scott?
What is it? Scott Camporelli. Sorry.
10 years he was my coach, my assistant coach in the midfield, and we were always looking for dirt on him. He was squeaky clean, and that would have been handy to you, Dad.
Great stuff. All right, we're going to take a break. By the way, I think we agreed that we'd give it to Clayton Oliver if he was in the running, but it was a practice match, and it was a practice for us as well.
So Nick Dacos gets it, right? Collingwood man?
Next week.
Next week, okay, right.
When the whips are cracking. We'll take a break. When we come back, our last look at weather conditions that affected football over the years. Remember the days down at Lake Oval? It looked like Albert Park Lake was actually there. The ball standing on its end. Unbelievable stuff. We'll come back and look at the TAB top 3 weather conditions in AFL football. Time to finish off the show with the TAB top 3. Couldn't get $1 out of Gil McLachlan when he was at the AFL, so we're going to get some out of him now on Footy Classified. And let's go back in time. This one was back in 1971, before your time. I remember this as a little schoolboy, the paper the next day at the Junction Oval. The fog was so bad. There's Jeff Southby playing for Carlton, leaning on one leg there. The fog at Fitzroy and Carlton was so bad, but back in the days when men were men, they kept playing on. You know, they didn't worry about all this stuff. Lightning, fog, whatever, they kept going. Mind you, I think a cyclone's a pretty good excuse to stop the game. Which one have you got, Lordy? You're going to go Sloaney? Go.
No, I'll go. I've got the game up in Canberra. I remember this one fondly because I was incredibly jealous of the snow game. It reminded me of Yarra Valley footy, and yeah, this is what I love the most. You can either choose to embrace it, and Hawks from memory end up absolutely destroying this game and winning, or you choose to sook about it and complain about it, which subsequently you'll lose that game. But that is classic Yarra Valley football weather. That was what I grew up in. That's football to me, Eddie and Hurdy.
That's Canberra. It's Canberra for you. I grew up in that weather, so, yep, it was often like that.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
What have you got for us?
I got the hail out at Waverley and the
Waverley.
Brisbane Bears v St Kilda. I think Paul Pios is the classic man here. The ball's coming towards him. He's just huddling in the hail. I tell you what, Waverley could get pretty cold and windy, and there weren't too many players when Waverley disappeared that argued, and we went under the roof at Etihad Stadium.
Were you there when the lights went out?
I was there, yeah. I was actually injured for the first part and then came back for the last quarter and a half, and we won.
How's that for an injection of class? Coming for a quarter and a half, bringing James Hurd.
That was pretty good. We won by about 20 points against St Kilda.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, because you came into the side.
No, I wouldn't say
unbelievable.
The difference.
Hey, Sloaney, thanks for being here, mate. We look forward to seeing you on the Sunday Footy Show with TJ and the boys.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, I can't wait to show up more regularly in this segment, maybe.
Mate, and Footy Classified. See, it's an easy place to be, Hurdy. You should have just come on all those years.
I'm glad I've left it till now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good fun.
I used to host it and get clobbered, so don't worry about that. That's it for Footy Classified. Good luck for the 2 games coming up in opening round, and then we're into round 1 next week. It's great, Footy. It's great to have you back. There's no doubt about it. Catch you next week.